You should have left it alone, vet!
It's over! Justice is here!
You know, I still get chills thinking about that day I pulled up to my new slice of heaven, or what I thought was heaving the rugged folds of the Rocky Mountains, out in Pine Valley County, Colorado, my old pickup groaning like it was begging for mercy as the pavement gave way to dirt roads that twisted like veins through the pines. And there I was, Mike Reynolds, a beat-up vet at 38, fresh out of the chaos of deployments that left me with more scars inside than out. Just me and my faithful mutt. Buddy, a big old shepherd mix with that mottled brown and black coat that made him look like he'd rolled in a coffee spill. His eyes sharp as knives but soft when they met men you'd been through hell together. Him pulling me out of those dark nights when the flashbacks hit like thunder. And now here we were, chasing silence on this 50-acre bargain I snagged at auction for peanuts, taxes unpaid, owners vanished. Or so the listing said, but Buddy, oh man, the second we stepped out, he froze, hackles up, whining low like something invisible was clawing at his soul, refusing to budge toward that eastern ridge, his body shaking as if the ground itself was poisoned. And I trusted him, always had, because Buddy didn't spook for nothing, not fireworks, not storms, but this. This felt different, like the land was whispering warnings we weren't meant to hear. I remember brushing it off at first. You know how it is when you're desperate for a fresh start after years of VA appointments and dead-end jobs that couldn't quiet the noise in my head. This place was my lifeline. Cheap because it was remote, overgrown with aspens and evergreens that whispered in the wind like old friends, a rickety cabin with a tin roof that pinged in the rain, and a creek bubbling clear as gin down the valley. But as we unloaded, Buddy started sniffing around the yard like he was on a mission, tail low, nose glued to the dirt near what looked like an old fire pit. And before I knew it, he was digging, paws flying, a frantic whine building in his throat that sent a shiver down my spine. So I grabbed a shovel from the truck. Hell, I'd dug enough foxholes in my time to know the rhythm, and there it was, a few feet down, a rusted ammo box. Heavy as regret, pried it open with my multi-tool, and inside, a faded leather wallet, some dog tags that weren't military, and a weathered notebook, pages yellowed, ink smeared from moisture, but one entry jumped out, scrawled in a hurry. The proof's under the twisted pine by the overlooked trust Harlan, he's in too deep. And just like that, my quiet retreat cracked open like a fault line. Because who leaves something like that buried unless they're running from demons? Or worse, becoming one. That notebook belonged to the previous owner, a guy named Tom, as I pieced together later, an outsider like me who'd bought the land dreaming of off-grid bliss, but he'd tangled with the local HIA. Even out here in the sticks, there's a homeowners association run by folks with more power than sense, led by this slick developer type who wanted to turn the whole valley into luxury cabins for city escapees, and Tom, being the stubborn sort, had refused to sell, digging up dirt on how they were fudging boundaries, bribing surveyors, even rumors of sabotage to force folks out. And that's when Sheriff Harlan showed up that first afternoon, his cruiser crunching gravel like bones, a burly guy in his late 50s with a mustache like a broom and eyes that smiled but lied. "Welcome to Pine Valley, Mr. Reynolds," he drawled, tipping his hat but scanning the place like he owned it. "Heard you got a steal on this plot," folks said. And we searched for hours under the sun filtering through the leaves, me sweating through my flannel, heart pounding not from effort but from that nagging dread, until we found a twisted pine, bark scarred like it had been hit by lightning years ago, and under its roots, another box, this one with documents, faded maps showing how the HOA had redrawn lines illegally, overlapping my deed with protected forest to devalue it, force a sale, and notes about Harlan taking kickbacks to look the other way, even hints of a cover-up for an accident, a worker killed during unauthorized clearing, body dumped to avoid lawsuits. And that's when the pieces clicked. Tom hadn't just left, he'd vanished because he got too close, and now I was stepping into his boots, the land sheep because it was tainted with greed, a conspiracy of small-town power plays where the HOA, backed by big money from Denver developers, manipulated everything from water rights to zoning, and Harlan, with his badge, enforced it all, his motive clear as day. Family ties to the HOA president, his brother-in-law, plus a fat retirement fund from under-the-table deals, and me, the new guy, was a threat just by existing, because if I dug deeper, their house of cards tumbled. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and mine came in the form of Lisa, Tom's sister, pulling up in her dusty Jeep that evening as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that made the mountains feel alive. She was in her early 30s, tough as nails with freckles, and hair tied back like she meant business, eyes red-rimmed from worry but fierce. "Are you Mike?" "The new owner," she called out, stepping closer but keeping her distance, and I nodded, Buddy surprisingly calm around her, even nudging her hand like he sensed kin. "I'm Lisa. Tom's sister owned this before you. Disappeared 6 months back. Sheriff said he skipped town owing debts, but that's bull. Tom was onto something big with the HOA, how they're stealing land bit by bit, rigging assessments to bankrupt folks, and Harlan's their muscle." Her voice cracked a bit, raw with the pain of loss, but she held it together, showing me a photo on her phone of Tom with his old lab, Max, the dog tags in the box matching his collar pattern, and just like that, we were allies, because I'd lost buddies overseas to senseless power grabs, and this felt personal. Lisa filling in the gaps, how Tom had gathered evidence of forged documents, environmental violations from illegal dumping to hide construction waste, poisoning the creek to scare off holdouts, and Harlan's crew intimidating witnesses, Even her own run-ins with anonymous threats, flat tires, whispered warnings at the local diner, and as we pored over the notebook by lantern light in the cabin, the air thick with pine scent and tension, I felt that old fire stir, the one that kept me alive in the sandbox, not rage but resolve, because this wasn't just about land, it was about justice, about not letting the bullies win again. We didn't waste time, diving in the next day with Buddy leading the charge, his nose like a compass through the underbrush, whining but determined as we followed the creek upstream, where Tom's notes pointed to anomalies, water tasting metallic, fish belly up in eddies that should have teemed with life, and sure enough, Buddy veered off trail, pawing at a barren patch where nothing grew, and we dug, sweat stinging our eyes, until we hit plastic, a buried drum leaking oily sludge, labeled with a faint logo from a Denver construction firm tied to the HOA, proof of their dumping to cut costs, contaminate the soil, drive values down for easy buyouts, and Lisa snapped photos, her hands steady despite the fear. This is it, Mike, this could blow it wide open. But the victory was short-lived, because as we covered it back up, Harlan's cruiser rolled in again, this time no smile, just a hard stare from behind mirrored shades. Evening, folks, see you've made a friend, MS. Carver, he said to Lisa, his tone dripping sarcasm like venom. Heard you were out exploring restricted area up there, unstable soil from old mines, for your safety, of course, and I stepped forward, Buddy growling low. Just walking my land, Sheriff, nothing restricted about that. But he leaned in close, breath like stale coffee. You city types come here thinking you own the place, but this valley has rules, and folks who break. Well, accidents happen, slips on ridges, brake failures on these roads. His eyes flicking to Lisa's Jeep, a clear threat. And as he sauntered back, I knew we'd crossed the line. He wasn't just corrupt, he was desperate. His whole life built on this scam, family legacy at stake, and we'd just become targets. Trap didn't begin to cover it later that night. Heading to Lisa's Jeep to get her samples to a lab in town, we found all 4 tires slashed clean, professional job, no cell signal in the hollow to call for help, and the cabin suddenly felt like a cage, but I wasn't about to wait like prey. We're not running, I told her, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. We're hitting back, Buddy can track more, find their main stash. And she nodded, fear turning to fire in her eyes, so we geared up with flashlights and resolve, Buddy on point, leading us deeper into the night-shrouded woods toward that eastern ridge he'd feared. His limp from an old injury not slowing him. And there, hidden under a false boulder, clever, I'll give him, that was a hatch, rusted but reinforced, leading to an old mining tunnel they'd repurposed as a dump site, barrels stacked like soldiers, reeking of chemicals that burned our throats, and in a makeshift office at the back, files galore, ledgers of payoffs, maps of targeted properties, even emails CCNG Harlan on cover-ups, including Tom's accident, staged as a fall, but really a push to silence him. And Lisa copied it all to a drive, her whispers urgent, this ends them. But in our rush, my boot hit a wire, a faint beep echoing, and we bolted, knowing we'd tripped an alarm straight to Harlan's desk. The siege hit like a storm, engines roaring up the drive, headlights piercing the dark like accusatory fingers, Harlan barking orders to his deputies. Flush him out, make it look like a break-in gone wrong. And we barricaded the door with the table, me clutching a fireplace poker like a lifeline, Buddy poised in the shadows, and when they smashed the back window, a deputy tumbling in, grabbing Lisa with a sneer. Got the meddler, drop it or she bleeds, his arm tied around her neck, her gasp cutting me like glass. But Buddy exploded from the dark, a fury of fur and fangs, clamping on the guy's leg with a snarl that echoed my own rage, and as he screamed, loosening his hold, I swung the poker true, dropping him cold. Good boy. I panted, taping him up, but it was just the start, the night stretching into a nightmare of shouts and probes, until I sparked the diversion smoke from the fire billowing thick, making him think we'd torched the place, and we slipped out, scrambling up the ridge in the black, Buddy limping but guiding, deputies' beams slashing close. One grazing us with a shot that whizzed by my ear, and at the peak, wind howling like banshees, Lisa's phone caught a bar, uploading the files to a state investigator she'd tipped off months back. But they closed in, Harlan himself cresting the rocks, gun drawn. You should have left it alone, but now it's personal, his voice laced with betrayal, like I'd stolen his empire. But Buddy charged again, taking a graze to the flank that yelped him back, buying us seconds as the upload dinged complete. And then rotors thumped overhead, choppers from the feds swarming like avenging angels, agents rappelling down. FB, drop it. Harlan, it's over. And in that floodlit chaos, he crumpled, cuffed and cursing, his empire crumbling as dawn broke, the valley bathed in gold. But as they hauled him away, he spat. This ain't justicide's theft from folks who've built this place. Leaving me wondering if there was truth in his twisted view. If the developers were just chasing progress, or if we'd upended lives beyond the guilty. Months later, with the HOA dissolved, indictments flying, Harlan got 20 years for corruption, manslaughter in Tom's case proven by those files, the land healed, creek running clear, and I turned it into a retreat for vets like me. A place to mend with hikes and campfires. Lisa's sticking around, her hand in mine now as Buddy chased squirrels, scar and all. But here's the thing that nags at me still. Was Harlan pure evil, or just a man protecting his kin in a world where big money devours the little guy? Did we bring justice, or spark more division in a community already frayed? I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below. Share if you face small-town shadows or HOA nightmares. Like and subscribe if this hit home, because stories like this remind us, we're all just one cheap deal away from uncovering the rot beneath the beauty.